Welcome to the place where walls whisper secrets, families fracture under the weight of their own lies, and every quiet discovery unravels a life built on deception. Here, nothing is as it seems. Behind every smile hides a betrayal, behind every silence waits a confession, and behind every loving gesture lies a strategy meant to control, deceive, or destroy. These stories follow the unraveling of a husband's hidden world keys tucked in shadows, letters sealed behind drywall, recordings buried in vents, each revealing a truth more shocking than the last. Watch how calm decisions become cold revenge, how illusions collapse under evidence too heavy to deny, and how the one they thought was weak becomes the only one strong enough to walk away. If you crave emotional twists, family drama, and revenge served with chilling precision, you've just stepped into the perfect world. The repair should have taken only a moment, just a loose patch of drywall near the corner of the bedroom. Something easy to fix, something insignificant. The kind of flaw people ignore until a quiet afternoon leaves too much space for noticing what has always been there. The paint had bubbled slightly, barely visible unless the light hit just right. A fingertip pressed the surface, feeling the hollow echo beneath, the soft crumble of plaster that shouldn't have given way so easily. The first crack broke with a whisper, the second with a sigh. By the third, the wall itself seemed to exhale, as if relieved to finally surrender its secret. Behind the thin layer of plaster, wrapped in dust and time, something waited. The flashlight beam trembled over an object nestled between wooden beams, too deliberate to be forgotten, too carefully placed to be accidental. It wasn't trash or debris left by the builders. It was intentional, hidden, protected, a small metal box coated in gray powder and age. Its coldness seeped into the skin the moment it was lifted, heavier than it appeared, as if burdened by everything it held inside. For a long time, it wasn't opened. It just sat there, resting on the floorboards, humming with a silent threat or a silent truth, impossible to know which yet. But instinct whispered that whatever lived inside would change everything. The latch clicked softly, the lid rose slowly, and the past unfolded with the cruelty of a blade gliding across unprotected skin. Inside lay a collection far too personal to belong inside a wall. Photographs dozens, each one showing him with someone who wasn't supposed to exist in his story. His arms around another woman, his smile wider, freer, untouched by the heaviness that always hung in their home. There were letters tucked neatly beneath the photos, written in handwriting unmistakably his, but filled with words never spoken in the house where he pretended to love. Words promising a future he denied existed. Words describing a life that excluded the person who found them. Receipts, hotel confirmations. A key to a place unfamiliar. The remnants of a life he buried behind drywall and pretended wasn't his. Every item was chosen, stored, protected, each one a thread tying him to a truth he'd never intended to reveal. The room felt smaller as the pieces spread across the floor, suffocating in their simplicity. They weren't dramatic. They weren't loud. They didn't need to be. Betrayal rarely shouts. Most of the time, it whispers through things like this, carefully folded letters, faded prints, stains of perfume on stationery. The house was quiet, but the silence felt heavier than before. It clung to the air like humidity before a storm, thick with the knowledge that innocence had never truly lived here. Trust had merely been a guest overstaying its welcome. Why hide this? Why place it inside the walls instead of throwing it away? Why keep relics of a life he shouldn't have built? The answer arrived with a slow, sinking clarity. He didn't keep them because he cherished them. He kept them because he wasn't done with them. They were reminders, possessions, insurance, or perhaps trophies kept by a man who lived two lives and used lies as the thread to stitch them together. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was architectural. He had buried his secrets in the home shared with him. He used the walls as guardians. He trusted them more than the person who slept beside him. The deception didn't stay outside. It lived inside the framework, breathing through the cracks, pulsing through the beams, echoing behind paint and plaster. It explained everything he had done before, now his coldness disguised as stress, his disappearances masked as work, his defensiveness whenever questioned, his odd anger at any mention of home repairs. He hadn't feared the house being broken. He feared the walls revealing him. Every photograph was a confession, every letter a wound, every item proof that the life believed to be real had been shaped from lies. Anger didn't come, not yet, only understanding. A painful, devastating understanding that the story lived wasn't the one he pretended to offer. The box closed with a soft but final sound, the kind that marks the end of pretending. Every secret hidden inside those walls now rested in the hands of the one he never expected to discover them. And the discovery of what he hid became the beginning of what he would lose. The box stayed on the floor longer than expected, closed but radiating a truth impossible to ignore. It felt like it breathed quietly, steadily waiting for the courage to reopen it and face the parts of him he had carved out of sight. Eventually, the lid lifted again, and the life he hid began to spill into the room like a flood that had been pressing against a dam for far too long. The photographs were the first thing to study, not the obvious ones, those taken in bright daylight. His smile stretching so easily it barely resembled the version worn at home. No, the real story lived in the background of the pictures. The familiarity of the places. The expensive restaurant he claimed he couldn't afford. The city trips he pretended to hate. The cozy little cabin he once said belonged to a coworker. The way he held the woman beside him, not politely, not casually, but with an intimacy he denied existed. The timestamps punched holes through his excuses. The dates lined up with nights he swore he was working late. The weekends he claimed he was visiting his parents. The mornings he left early saying he had urgent meetings. Every lie became visible with brutal precision. Then came the receipts, folded neatly, preserved with care, each one offering another piece of the double life built behind someone else's back. Hotel stays in cities never visited together. Jewelry purchases that never arrived at home. Dinner bills far higher than the cheap meals he described. A flight ticket to a place he insisted he never traveled to. One receipt in particular trembled between the fingers. 2 rings purchased months before the wedding, one matching the band on the woman's finger in the photos. Not the one worn at home. The letters sliced deeper. They weren't dramatic declarations of love. They were worse routine affection, inside jokes, weekend plans. Details about future dreams he never shared in the life lived beside him. He wrote about longing, about missing someone else's laugh, someone else's comfort, someone else's presence in the mornings. He wrote about the burden of the marriage he had chosen, calling it an obligation, a mistake, a temporary situation. Temporary. The word bled through the page. He had described the life shared with him as temporary, while building something permanent with someone else. Some letters came from her. They carried her handwriting soft curves, gentle strokes, each word dripping with the confidence of someone who believed she was the true center of his world. She wrote about trips they planned, about private moments they kept hidden, about promises he swore he would fulfill once he handled things at home. There was a phrase repeated in more than one letter. You said she would never know. The certainty in those words struck like a blow. His secrecy wasn't accidental. It wasn't weakness. It wasn't fear. It was intention, deliberate and calculated. The memories inside that metal box weren't forgotten remnants of a past life. They were active pieces of a present one. He had lived with 2 faces, 2 loyalties, 2 futures, one he nurtured and one he tolerated. One he kept glowing in the light, and one he buried in a wall because he couldn't risk losing either. Every artifact exposed a version of him carefully crafted through betrayal. A man who pretended exhaustion to avoid intimacy. A man who blamed stress to escape accountability. A man who played the victim to win sympathy from the family that quietly enabled his selfishness. The weight of the truth didn't crush anything. It sharpened it. Each lie illuminated more than heartbreak. It revealed the entire structure of his deceit. The late-night calls, the mysterious anger, the emotional distance, the sudden trips. The coldness passed off as fatigue. The excuses backward and forward that always ended with making someone else feel unreasonable for asking simple questions. The evidence didn't break trust, it explained why it had been breaking slowly, one unnoticed crack at a time. In those scattered pieces on the floor, one thing became painfully clear. He didn't expect to be found out because he believed he had shaped someone too loyal, too forgiving, too hopeful to ever look for what he worked so hard to hide. But the walls he trusted more than the vows he made had betrayed him. As everything returned to the box, neatly, deliberately, one truth echoed louder than the rest. The moment he built a life outside the marriage, he ended the one inside it. The decision to bring the box to his family wasn't impulsive. It was quiet, deliberate, as calm as the moment before a candle flame bends under its own heat. Nothing was said when stepping into their home. Nothing hinted at the storm tucked neatly inside a simple metal container. The family gathered in the living room, their smiles automatic, their greetings rehearsed, their warmth practiced like an old routine they'd performed too many times to make mistakes. The box was placed on the coffee table without a word. The mother's smile faltered for only a heartbeat barely visible, barely noticeable, yet enough to reveal she already knew what was inside. The father's posture stiffened, his hands clasping a little too tightly. The siblings exchanged a glance so quick it could have been missed, but it carried the unmistakable weight of recognition. They were not confused. They were not surprised. They were prepared. That was the first betrayal of the moment. The husband's face went pale, but not with shock. His expression mirrored someone watching a match fall onto a fuse he had hoped would stay hidden forever. His eyes moved from the box to his family, then back again, searching for someone to speak first, someone to salvage the unraveling silence. The mother finally opened the lid with careful fingers, as if handling something sacred. She didn't gasp at the photographs. She didn't recoil at the letters. She didn't question the receipts or the ring tucked at the bottom. Instead, she exhaled slowly and said, with unsettling composure, "We didn't want things to come out this way." The word struck harder than any scream. The father leaned back, his voice measured, disappointingly calm. "There are things you don't understand. Marriage is complicated. Complicated. A word people use when they want to dress betrayal in gentler clothing." The sister offered a weak smile, eyes soft with a pity that wasn't earned. He was confused. He's been struggling. Struggling. Another lie used to excuse the worst parts of him. The brother nodded solemnly, as if he'd been waiting for years to play his part. "We didn't want you to get hurt." The hypocrisy of the statement clung to the air like smoke from a flame they had helped ignite. Their reactions weren't emotional. They were strategic. Too smooth. Too unified. Too carefully aligned. The realization anchored itself heavier than the box ever could. They had always known. They had known about the other woman. They had known about the secret trips, the lies, the missing nights, the wild stories patched together like cheap fabric. They had known and chosen silence. Not out of care, but out of loyalty to him, a loyalty so blind, it trampled anyone who didn't share their blood. Their calmness wasn't compassion. It was complicity. They had protected him from consequences. They had shielded his lies. They had watched someone beside him question sanity, self-worth, and reality while holding the truth in their hands. The mother closed the box gently, as if tucking a child into bed. You have to understand, he didn't want to hurt anyone. Every artifact inside contradicted her words. Every photo proved intent. Every letter revealed choice. Every secret showed he wanted two lives and expected everyone else to help maintain the illusion. The husband finally spoke, voice cracking under the weight of a truth he could no longer control. It wasn't supposed to get this far, but it already had. Farther than he ever imagined. The room felt colder now, stripped of its practiced warmth. Their smiles weren't kind anymore. They were masks slipping in the aftermath of exposure. The family they pretended to be had dissolved into something raw, something real, something unmistakably manipulative. They weren't comforting him. They were protecting their reputation, scrambling to rearrange the narrative before the truth reached anyone outside these walls. The father cleared his throat. Let's keep this in the family. As if betrayal were a family heirloom to protect. As if silence were a duty owed to them. As if the pain caused by their son was an inconvenience they preferred to keep quiet. They didn't realize silence had already been broken. Not by the evidence, not by their reactions, but by the quiet, uncheckable decision formed the moment their masks cracked. The truth had always been buried first in the walls, and now in their carefully rehearsed faces. But once exposed, it had only one direction left to go. Forward. The box found in the wall should have been the end of it, but betrayal rarely confines itself to one hiding place. Once a lie is exposed, others crawl out from their shadows, desperate to survive. And the house, once a sanctuary, began to shift under the weight of unopened truths. Each room suddenly felt alive with secrets, every corner humming with the tension of things waiting to be found. It started with a key, a small silver key wrapped in tissue paper behind the dresser tucked so neatly it seemed placed with ceremony. Too small for any door in the house, too polished to be old, yet worn at the teeth from repeated use. The moment it was held, a cold certainty landed. It belonged to a place never visited together, a place preserved for someone else. Then came a folder hidden beneath a loose floorboard. Old documents, new documents, signatures that didn't match. Accounts opened in shadows, transactions he never mentioned. Each page peeled back the remaining innocence of the life believed to be shared. The folder didn't just whisper deceit, it screamed planning. He hadn't stumbled into betrayal. He had built it with intention, constructing a future no one else was invited into. A paper trail of escape routes, secret purchases, deposits funneled into accounts connected to names that appeared nowhere in the home they both lived in. Every sheet carried the smell of ink and dishonesty. The third discovery was worst of all. A set of small, black recording devices hidden inside vents, behind frames, under furniture. Devices that had listened longer than any human ever could. Devices gathering fragments of private thoughts, quiet sighs, whispered vulnerabilities, moments never meant for anyone else. The recordings played one after another, each one a cut that sank deeper with every replay. Conversations captured without permission. Confessions made during lonely nights. Fears spoken in quiet moments he pretended not to hear. And worst, his voice, cold, detached, discussing these recordings with someone else. Laughing about them, interpreting them, twisting them, analyzing them like a scientist studying a subject, not someone studying a partner. You see, it's easy to make her doubt herself. She talks too much when she's tired. I keep the recordings in case I ever need proof. Proof. He hadn't collected memories, he had collected ammunition. The realization felt nauseating. The home once believed to be a place of safety had been turned into an observation chamber, a museum of manipulated love. A crime scene disguised as domestic peace. Walls that once echoed laughter now echoed deception. Rooms once filled with warmth now felt staged. Every object seemed suspicious, every drawer a potential hiding place. A bookshelf shifted, revealing another hollowed space. Inside more keys, more documents, more evidence of a man orchestrating a double life with the precision of someone who never expected to be caught. A burner phone lay at the back, its cracked screen lighting up with messages at the slightest movement. The notifications told the rest of the story. Did she suspect anything? When will you finally leave? Don't forget the plan. Did you hide the copies? I can't wait until everything is ours. The words were jagged edges slicing through the last strands of disbelief. There was no accident, no confusion, no misunderstanding. There was only a web of lies, carefully spun, every thread anchored by a choice he made with clear intention. And like all webs, it wasn't designed to protect, it was designed to trap. The more uncovered, the more obvious his strategy became. He had been preparing for years, layering lies like bricks, sealing truth behind walls and under floorboards, hiding fragments of himself in secret compartments meant to keep someone blind, obedient, small. But lies have a way of collapsing under their own weight. The house turned cold, as if rejecting the man who corrupted it. Dust rose from every hiding place, like the ghosts of truths he had tried to suffocate. The air thickened with betrayal, the kind that stains a home so completely it can never be washed out. Standing in the center of the room, surrounded by evidence that felt more like confessions, one truth became undeniable. He hadn't just lied. He had designed an entire life meant to be lived without the person standing in the ruins of his deceit. And now that every piece of his hidden world had been unearthed, the home he corrupted would never protect him again. Silence became a companion long before revenge ever crossed the mind. It settled into the walls of the house, into the quiet spaces between breaths, into the pauses where questions used to live. After uncovering the lies he buried so carefully, there was nothing left to ask and nothing left worth hearing. The evidence didn't merely speak, it roared with a truth so undeniable that anger felt unnecessary, almost primitive in comparison. He walked through the house, unaware that every step echoed against the weight of what had already been discovered. He spoke with ease, smiled with practiced softness, touched surfaces that once made him feel safe. Yet the house no longer belonged to him, not in the way he believed. Every secret he hid had shifted its allegiance. Every truth he buried now served someone else. The silence between them sharpened. Not heavy, not tense, just final. He mistook that silence for surrender, which only made it easier to watch him fall into the illusion he crafted. The family had always relied on that illusion, their pedestal of superiority built on half-truths, whispered judgments, and the belief that their son could do no wrong. They treated disrespect as guidance, control as concern, and manipulation as unconditional love. When they defended him, they weren't defending truth. They were protecting their delusion. Revenge wouldn't aim to destroy the home. Homes don't betray. People do. The goal wasn't to scream or beg or fight for dignity they had already tried to strip away. No revenge would target something far more fragile than drywall or stone. It would target the illusion they depended on to survive, the fantasy that made them feel powerful while shrinking anyone who didn't mirror their arrogance. It began with precision, not chaos. Copies of documents, screenshots of messages, photographs of the hidden objects, recordings extracted from the devices he tucked away, bank statements lined up like soldiers ready for war. No dramatics, no rush, just quiet preparation, the kind that doesn't seek permission. His family had once smiled with condescending pity, believing weakness was the only form worn in their presence. They underestimated the strength born from devastation, the kind that no longer fears loss because everything meaningful had already been taken. When the family invited another gathering, expecting compliance and silence, the timing felt perfect. Their house smelled of comfort, familiar meals, and fake warmth. The husband sat close to them, leaning into their righteousness, unaware of the truth, poised to unravel the very foundation beneath their feet. The evidence wasn't revealed all at once. That would have been too merciful. It began with a single envelope placed on the table, sliding across the surface with the soft sound of inevitability. They opened it with confidence, expecting something trivial. What they found instead was the first fracture, a receipt he never intended them to see, stamped with a date and location he lied about visiting. Their eyes flickered panic, confusion, denial. Then came the second envelope, then the third, and the fourth. With each revelation, their control slipped, their superiority cracked. Their carefully built narrative burned quietly beneath them. They asked questions they already feared the answers to. They looked at him with confusion first, then disgust, then something far worse, recognition. They recognized him for who he truly was, not who he pretended to be. He tried to argue, but lies crumble when exposed to direct light. His excuses fell apart in his throat. His family, once his greatest shield, became his first line of defeat. They accused him. They questioned him. They turned on him. They demanded explanations he could no longer fabricate fast enough. Every truth he buried returned to him with sharp edges. The family's illusion didn't just crack, it collapsed. And through it all, silence remained. Cold, controlled, steady. There was nothing to add. Nothing to defend. Nothing to claim. The evidence had spoken in a voice louder than rage could ever reach. When the final paper fell from trembling fingers and the room dissolved into chaos, accusations and betrayal, only one person remained untouched by the storm he created. Revenge wasn't loud. It was patient. It was precise. And it was complete the moment his illusion died. The room didn't explode at first. Exposure rarely comes with the dramatic thunder people imagine. It begins quietly, an inhale held too long, a heartbeat skipping its rhythm, a silence so sharp it cuts before anyone speaks. When the last piece of evidence was placed on the table, photos, receipts, recordings, forged documents, the key to a life he lived in secret, everything inside the room seemed to stop. Even the air forgot how to move. His family stared down at the truth, their faces shifting in slow, painful stages. Confusion, resistance, denial, and finally the unmistakable collapse that comes when protecting someone becomes impossible. The mother was the first to break. Her voice cracked as she whispered his name, not with worry, but with betrayal. "How could you?" She breathed, trembling as though the son she raised had been replaced by a stranger. The father tried to hold himself upright, gripping the arm of his chair until his knuckles whitened, but even he couldn't stop the tremor that exposed his fear. Their loyalty fractured in an instant too fragile to bear the weight of his deception. The siblings erupted next. The sister demanded answers, voice sharp enough to cut skin. "You told us she was unstable. You told us she was paranoid." Her hands shook with fury, but beneath the anger lived shame that she believed everything he fed her. The brother turned even colder. "You used us. You played us all." His words came out low, heavy, as if spoken through clenched teeth. The husband's eyes darted across the room, searching desperately for the loyalty that had always protected him. But loyalty evaporates quickly in the presence of undeniable truth. He opened his mouth, but whatever explanation he attempted to form dissolved into stuttered fragments. "It's not, you don't understand. I was going to. It wasn't supposed." Every excuse collided with the truth laid bare before them. Every lie tripped over another lie. His carefully built world, constructed from manipulation, secrecy, and entitlement, began to crack under the pressure of exposure. The mother cried openly now, weeping not for the pain he caused others, but for the humiliation he brought to their name. The father's disappointment burned through the air like smoke. The siblings turned away from him, disgust lining their expressions, the same faces that once defended him now unable to even look at him. The hardest part for him wasn't the evidence. It was losing the audience he relied on, losing the people who believed he could do no wrong, losing the version of himself he performed for them. He tried redirecting blame, reaching for the one strategy he always used. "You're twisting things," he shouted, pointing at the evidence as though it hadn't come from his own hands. "You're all falling for this trap." But the truth had already done its work. No one was falling anymore. They were waking up. The mother stood, her chair scraping violently against the floor. "We defended you," she said, her voice trembling. "We defended you while you were lying to all of us." The father shook his head, defeated. "I thought I raised a man, not a coward." Every word sliced him open, leaving him exposed in ways he had always assumed were impossible. He had believed he could control perception forever, that his charm could erase doubts, that the family he manipulated would always quiet their questions to maintain their perfect image. But images shatter easily. The accusations flew faster than he could catch them, each one a reflection of the world he built and thought he could maintain. He looked small, now unsteady, cornered, desperate. His hands trembled, his voice cracked, his confidence evaporated with every truth spoken aloud. And in the middle of the chaos, one person remained untouched. The silence around that presence wasn't passive, it was powerful. It held everything the evidence had already accomplished. There was no need to speak, no need to argue, no need to fight for a place in a family that had tried to push someone out with cruelty and arrogance. The evidence had done what words never could. It destroyed the illusion they treasured. It dismantled the lies he used to remain superior. It forced them to confront the reality they helped create. When the storm finally calmed into exhausted, shattered breaths, only one thing remained clear. In the ruins of their downfall, the person they underestimated most was the only one still standing unbroken. If this story pulled you in, shocked you, or made your heart race, make sure to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell. More secrets will surface, more lies will break, and more revenge will rise from the silence. Stay with us. Your next jaw-dropping twist is already on the way.